This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Detroit is the greatest!
Straight up light you on fire for a Coney dog right now.
Darren McCarty comes back with Neiman in front of him. McCarty draws. McCarty in. McCarty scores! A magnificent goal! Darren McCarty!
Stafford takes, throws, end zone, Calvin, touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Welcome in, everybody. Thank you for downloading another episode. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Jason will be joining me via telephone. Oh my goodness, if Jason and I sound like we got an extra pep in our step, we both probably enjoyed the Michigan game way too much. I had a great Thanksgiving, had a great couple weeks off, and now ready to come back, podcast, have a good old time, talk a bunch of shit, and really revisit what was probably the most lopsided victory for Ohio State over the Michigan Wolverines. And what made it so spectacular, not that they won the game, but in the fashion and the manner in which they dismissed the Michigan Wolverines. And that was so surprising in that Michigan, and I think that's why a lot of people are so frustrated. Adam is banging his hands on his desks. He's not happy. He's pissed off. Everybody that is so riled up and upset with Jim Harbaugh is upset at the fact that there was so much to play for. Michigan had a great opportunity to get to Indy, to silence all the critics. What does everybody say? Jim Harbaugh in year 4, all that money that he's been paid to come in and change the culture of the University of Michigan, not to come in and win 9-10 games every year and have nothing to show for it in terms of success, but to actually, when the big moment arises, to take your team on the road when you're the better team and actually handle your business. And what everybody saw on Saturday was really embarrassing and really shed light on not just the program at Michigan, but the head coach in Jim Harbaugh. Remember, that Michigan team, I feel like if they were coached properly, if they had the proper motivation, the proper mindset, if they didn't think that, you know what, they could just show up to Columbus and run the ball down Ohio State's throat, if they could just impose their will, they did not have the proper game plans in order to execute to win a game with everything on the line, with the stakes that big. Everything that everybody saw was really highlighted, and everybody now is really taking a critical look at Jim Harbaugh because it wasn't a close victory. The Michigan Wolverines were not competitive in that contest versus Ohio State. And on the biggest stage, when everybody's watching, Fox had huge ratings for that game. Everybody saw Ohio State utilize their speed, take advantage, specifically in the area that they felt was a weakness for the Michigan Wolverines in terms of speed, in terms of not being able to handle man-to-man coverage on defense, utilizing crossing routes, quarterback Haskins taking advantage and really utilizing his skills. And on the Michigan side, I really feel like the game plan was not appropriate. I mean, there were so many second down run calls. There was a lack of aggressiveness on offense. And yeah, you had the ability when you were already down to kind of throw the ball around a little bit, take advantage of Ohio State playing a little bit lax. But in the critical moments in that first half, Ohio State took it to you. And there was a sequence there that I'll talk to Jason about that was just really, a head scratcher where, Ohio State's moving the ball and they bring in, they take out Haskins and they bring in this young quarterback that's a dual threat option. It was kind of embarrassing looking at that coaching decision by Urban Meyer. But he felt confident that, I could take out my starter. We're going to move the ball. And then in the second half, everybody felt like there was going to be some massive adjustments from Don Brown because he had shown that all season. It didn't happen. Ohio State just took it to the max. They put their pedal to the metal. Ohio State decided it was time to destroy the Michigan Wolverines, and that's what happened. And now everyone is left to react to it, wondering and deciding, was this actually a good season in 2018? Where do we go from here? What's the actual expectation that we want to have now for Jim Harbaugh? And like I said in previous podcasts, and like I've told Adam, sometimes in a trolling manner, sometimes reasonably and professionally, I said that I think Michigan's biggest weakness is Jim Harbaugh. His coaching ability has, been in question in big games, especially with the game plans that he's decided to utilize on the biggest stage. And I think versus Ohio State, you needed to open it up a little bit more. You needed to air it out, especially when you look at the talent that Michigan has on offense. I think this game, Karan Higdon would have been fine if he only got the ball 10 times. If he had only, carried the ball maybe even less than that, and maybe emphasize the passing game, the deep passing game a little bit more. Utilize a tight end, maybe utilize some scrambling plays from Shea Patterson. Be a little bit more imaginative in terms of what you can do on offense. That game plan that Michigan utilized just wasn't going to be good enough to keep up offensively with the Ohio State Buckeyes. And then defensively, holy cow. I mean, on the last Doc and Jock podcast where we had a friend of the podcast, Mike Putnam, on, I told him, aren't you concerned a little bit about Haskins, the crossing routes, the ability of Ohio State to score? And he was like, nope, the defense of Michigan's going to handle their business. And they didn't. And in the end, everybody's left now to sit back and judge and figure out what's going to happen next. And I can't wait to talk to Jason about it. But it's a really fascinating look at, a program that has invested a lot in their head coach. And up until this point, 4 years in, he's done a good job. But I feel like that's not what he was brought in here to do. I feel like he was brought in here to take Michigan from where they were and make them into an Ohio State, make them into a program that resembles Alabama. And right now, 4 years in, and Jim Harbaugh hasn't taken that team even once to Indy is so surprising. I really, would have said this year. I think everybody predicted it. Everybody thought that what they had observed throughout the year after Michigan lost to Notre Dame, they really felt strongly that team could travel to Columbus and handle their business and at least be competitive. It just didn't happen. And I really was surprised that it was a blowout. I haven't been shocked that many times in the landscape of sports in terms of predictions, but, I did have a little bit of an inclination. I did troll Adam a little bit and say, hey, I think Ohio State's going to win, but not based on facts, just based on my realization, based on what everybody says, that sometimes Vegas has a lot of information in terms of a sports fan. And what happened was earlier in the day on Saturday, the line was about 4.5. Before noon. And all of a sudden, you started hearing some rumblings that the line kind of went down a little bit to +4, meaning that a lot of action kind of came in late on Ohio State. And that sometimes indicates that there's some information that maybe the big guys know about, and they decide to place a bunch of money in one direction to move the line. So I found it fascinating that a lot of money was spent and gambled on Ohio State +4.5 and things like that. And it moved the line down a little bit to Ohio State +4 when the game kicked off. So, like I said, I did it to troll Adam. I really thought it was going to be a close game. Probably, if you had asked me Saturday, realistically, I probably felt like it was going to be a victory for Michigan. Close, super close game. But what a great experience watching that game because, I watched it at a bar. I watched it at the Tap and Barrel Grill in Shelby Township, a great sponsor of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I had a great time, enjoyed some food, enjoyed some Guinness, and sat back and actually got a chance to watch a football game, and Ohio State was just ready to go from Jump Street. And you looked at it and you said, oh boy, can Michigan, once Ohio State started putting the pedal to the metal, can Michigan keep up? And then what you started seeing was, Ohio State just take advantage thoroughly of all the weaknesses that Michigan had throughout 2018 were exposed. The speed that Ohio State was just able to show was outstanding. I mean, there were several plays where the wide receivers for Ohio State were wide open, and you looked at it and you go, wow, how is that possible that Don Brown dialed up these blitzes? He's known as Mr. Blitz. His defense, everybody was ranting and raving for Don Brown to win an award and to highlight his defense. And what happened? Dwayne Haskins basically was super clean. The blitzes just didn't get there, and he had all day to pick apart that Michigan defense, all day to survey the landscape and make plays and make throws. And how highly can you speak of Dwayne Haskins? I mean, last year he came in, in a situation in which the Ohio State starting quarterback went out, and he came in and just handled his business. What an asset. And really what has happened is the perception of Jim Harbaugh after a loss like that has changed dramatically. The fans are turning on each other. You got a lot of bandwagon Michigan fans requesting that Jim Harbaugh go to the NFL. You got, host of the Michigan podcast really describing that contest as a reckoning and that massive changes need to take place. And it's a situation in which a game like that really could cause Michigan to make some serious changes, especially on the offense. I'm not sure they're going to be willing to change a whole heck of a lot on that defense because the talent would dictate that you continue to, utilize the scheme in which Don Brown has had success. I think what you can do better is, if you want to make drastic changes and to get results faster, is you got to update that offense. If Michigan could have competed with Ohio State and go toe-to-toe with them, throw the ball deeper, score at will, we could have had a contest that could have been like 62-58, and we could have had an all-time classic, but it was just one-sided. It was unfortunate in that Ohio State brought the noise, Ohio State brought the passion, and Michigan didn't. Flat out, Michigan's game plan was ineffective. There were so many scenarios in which Michigan put themselves in third and long offensively that the bar was absolutely pissed. The bar that I was at was ranting and raving. They were upset at the fact that there were so many run plays. There were so many third down plays that were 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, and you just put Shea Patterson in a tough position. And what surprised me was that Ohio State defense, which everybody talked about being not as good in 2018, they were able to pressure. They were able to get to Shea Patterson. You saw Shea Patterson get rocked, get hit, get sacked, get put on his ass, get rushed, and he basically was not able to really execute a whole heck of a lot. Ohio State, too, as well, made some mental errors and gave Michigan a touchdown late in the second quarter, and that was really a shocking play in and of itself, in that an Ohio State special teamer drops the football after a kickoff, and it bounces right to the Michigan player, and they're able to capitalize. But, what was only a 5-point lead blew up in the second half, and Jason's on the line now. I can't wait to talk to him. I can't wait to talk to Jason about Michigan versus Ohio State and get his sense, quick recap of what he thought about Michigan State's season. But as I sit here, like I said, I'm super excited to see Michigan get slapped like that. Really puts them in their place, because really throughout the winning streak, everybody at Michigan was puffing their chest out. They were telling everybody they were the greatest, and to get humbled, to your rival like that, it was just so special to watch. And now I bring in my guy, Jason Jarvi. I started this show. Everybody knows we're Spartan supporters, but to watch that contest in that manner, to see Michigan get destroyed, I hadn't eaten food that tasted that good, listened to music that sounded that great. I literally was a little bit grumpy with the misses, and that turned around. I thoroughly, Jason, enjoyed that ass kicking probably more than anybody.
Yeah, I'm not usually hip on the wrestling lingo, but to quote the Iron Sheik, I'll break your back and make you humble.
I break your back and make you humble. That's what happened. And how did you watch that game? And were you as shocked, I think, as the nation was, that Ohio State destroyed Michigan?
Well, I didn't catch the beginning of the game, and I was out with my family, and my nephew was actually keeping me updated on the score. And he was like, "Oh, it's 7-6." I'm like, "Okay, this is about what I would figure from this game. It should be a pretty solid game." And just as the points mounted up, and it was very, it was confusing, but because I was fully I was assuming that Michigan was going to go in there, and I thought they were going to just destroy Ohio State. I thought the way that they've been playing, and with the way that Ohio State looked against Maryland, I thought they had no chance. And I thought Michigan had this season wrapped up. This was going to be their magical season, that they would at least get a chance to go to the playoff.
That's what I think at first is so upsetting to Wolverine Nation, is that there was so much on the line. You weren't even competitive. And I think I started the show talking about Jim Harbaugh, the game plan, the fact that Michigan looked like they were ill-prepared in one of the biggest games that they could participate in. I just am so shocked that that's the performance that was put on tape for everybody to see, especially with the fact that everybody knew. I talked about it on the last Doc and Jock podcast. Everybody knew that Indiana utilized the crossing route to get first downs, to score some points. For Michigan to continue to go man-to-man and not even attempt to try and game plan for that was shocking and really shows the level of ego that Don Brown and that defense had.
Yeah, it was just, at all levels, it made no sense to me as to how Ohio State was just able to shred the Michigan State defense. That, Dwayne Haskins is a very good college quarterback, but I didn't expect him to be able to go out there and do what he did against the number one ranked defense in the nation. And then on the offensive side of the ball, you got a guy in Karan Higdon who I think is a very special running back. I hate Michigan as much as you, but I think Higdon, he has something special, and I think he may be playing on Sunday, but they didn't give him the ball enough. They let Shea Patterson, and I know when you're down that much, you kind of have to throw the ball, but it made very little sense as to what Michigan's game plan coming into this, and they really just looked like they gave up. The pinpointing moment that I would say that this game was over was on that jet sweep where I forget what his name was, but he basically he ran at 78 yards and it was gone. The Michigan defensive backs just gave up.
Yeah, Jason, it was a shocking situation in which all three phases of the game were in favor of Ohio State: offense, defense, special teams. And then you look at it, I think what's highly upsetting to Michigan Nation is that you don't want to pay a coach top dollar to be an average coach and to basically go into the biggest games and not have your team prepared. It was just, I think a different coach might have gone with a different entire game plan up against Ohio State. You can't prepare the same way that you prepare week in and week out against, Rutgers and Maryland and Michigan State. This is Ohio State. You got to throw everything in the playbook. You got to throw everything at them. And for them not to use exotic blitzes, for them not to utilize, special plays on offense, basically they showed up and felt like, you know what, our best will take care of business. And they were wrong on so many levels. And I think it will force Michigan to change, at least on offense. I said that. I feel like, you know what? Michigan didn't bring in Jim Harbaugh to maybe get to Indy once every 5 years. They thought that they were getting, their version of Urban Meyer and their version of Nick Saban. And up until this point, to not even get to Indy once, and I look back, and everybody's now bringing it to my attention, in his entire coaching career, coaching college kids, he's never won a division. He's never won a division in which he's coached in. That's crazy.
Yeah, I think the one thing that this game has really solidified, and it sucks as a Michigan State fan too, and we talked about it, is that there are two elite college coaches, and that's Nick Saban and that's Urban Meyer. Those guys, they're on different levels. They get their teams up, and everyone else is basically just chasing them. And Jim Harbaugh, he's, maybe he can get his team to where they can get to the Big Ten championship, but I don't think he's ever going to be at that level where he's competing for national championships year in, year out. I don't see that happening, because I think it would take fundamental change in him, that he would have to bring in different players. He'd have to be able to change, and I don't see that coming from Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, and the surprising aspect of, again, the things that we saw on Saturday, and we're talking about the absolute destruction of Michigan at the hands of Ohio State on the road, was I feel like you had a quarterback that could have aired it out. I think that Shea Patterson early on could have been somebody that could have been a difference maker. I mean, you got those wide receivers, Peoples-Jones, Tariq Black, Nico Collins. I just think early on, instead of just run, pass on third down, maybe if you utilize some special plays, maybe early on have a switch at quarterback and see if Milton can do some things to extend some plays. I think in a game like that, you got to empty out the playbook and try everything. But I think that sometimes Michigan's ego, they really believe that, you know what, this was going to be their year where their best could have handled business. And no, you got to recognize going in that Ohio State is not Rutgers. Ohio State is one of the top 5 teams every year, despite what their record is, because they have Urban Meyer. And I think now everyone's eyes is open, is that as long as Ohio State has Urban Meyer, if Ohio State comes into that game with an under 500 record, they place such a premium on that game. You got to expect that they're going to give you their best, and you got to step it up. You can't show up to Columbus on the road with a game plan like that. That's what happens. You get your ass kicked. But I will ask you this, because I think, too, one of the reasons is that, you know what? Karan Higdon made the guarantee. Everybody was talking about Michigan. They came in the higher-ranked team. They were the ones doing the talking, revenge tour. I feel like had they not maybe been talking so much, had they not been a little bit so braggadocious, that maybe Ohio State sat back and was like, okay, you know what? Michigan thinks they're going to come in here as a favorite and destroy us. They had the psychological edge to actually put down a performance that was legendary. And I think, hate to say it, but, a reporter asked Karan Higdon, I think he should have went the PC route. And I think, maybe down the line, a year or two from now, he'll look back at it and say, you know what? As I know, as meaningless as some people will say guarantees are, once that went national, I think that was a major mistake on his part.
I mean, it's a hard position that he was put in when he got asked that question. What are you supposed to say? I mean, are you just supposed to say, hey, we're going to go out there and give it our best? You're a team that is, at the time, number 4 in the college football playoff rankings, and you want to go out there and you expect to win. So, I mean, it's tough either way. I mean,
but don't you think, Jason, I think Matt Patricia and other NFL coaches do it all the time. What they do is they start pumping up the opponent despite their record. Like when the Lions are going to play Arizona or Buffalo, you're going to hear about how great their team is and things like that. I think a way in which Karan could have did it was not guarantee the victory, but say, you know what, I look over there at that team over there in Columbus. We got a lot of respect for them. We got to handle our business. It's going to be a tough contest. And if we do the things that we got to do, then it could look favorable for us. I don't think you look at it.
But this isn't the NFL. This is college football. And, how old is Karan Higdon? He's
22.
He's 22. He's still a kid. He's barely able to drink. And as much respect as I have for him, I give him credit for at least going out there and guaranteeing, because, hey, I'm a Spartan fan and I believe that Michigan was going to go out there and win.
So what does this mean for Jim Harbaugh going forward? Do you see massive changes? Because he didn't get a chance. He refused to talk to the media on Monday. They're going to wait until the game in which they're going to go to the bowl. Once that's announced, he'll address the media. But right now, nationally, locally, on every radio show, podcast, people are, by and large, super pissed at the manner in which that season ended. Most people are calling the season a failure. They're not happy. Where do they go from here in order to turn things around?
Well, the one thing that I look at with Jim Harbaugh, and after the game, I was trying to think of how, what's the storyline here? And I thought I came up with, the top storyline. But then I read, 5 articles that had the same thing. And the biggest thing that I look at when I think of Jim Harbaugh is, has he ever won a game that he wasn't supposed to win? Because I feel like he's come in here and he's pretty much either won the games that he's supposed to win, he's lost games that he's supposed to win, or they've lost the games they're supposed to lose. He hasn't gone out there. I don't see them with a signature victory in any of his 4 years. He's gone 0-4 now against Ohio State. He's gone 2-2 against Michigan State, where he probably should have been 4-0 against Michigan State. I mean, realistically. So it's like, what is he? And people had such high hopes, and it's funny to think of now when they refer to him as Jesus in khakis, and they really truly believed that this guy was going to deliver them just national championship after national championship, hand over fist. It's like LeBron when he went to Miami, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, and you need to realize, and Michigan fans need to realize, that he's not Urban Meyer, he's not Nick Saban. Just come to grips with that.
And Jason, I don't think they did up until Saturday. Now they believe it. Now they realize, you know what? All this talk about all the great recruits, all the great pub that they got, all the belief went away. And once the belief goes away, I think as a fan, you can take a more critical look at the Michigan program. And I think a lot of the fans are like, you know what? it's great to defeat Rutgers and Michigan State, but they do believe because of their ego that Michigan is a great program, and they have turned on Michigan. They've turned on that program, and while some definitely have faith that, you know what, they're going to be around and win 8 to 10 games every year, the belief that they can accomplish the major goal is starting to diminish, because when you lose like that, again, it wasn't a close game. By and large, it was a total destruction. When you see a game go down like that, you start to question, okay, if you can't beat Ohio State in a Big Ten where it was kind of a down year, then what are you going to do, let's say, should you make it to, the college football playoff, if it's 4 teams or 8 teams? Imagine if Michigan would have played Alabama. Man,
I would have loved to see that, because I think Alabama's going to house whoever they play.
Exactly. And so I think now everyone's eyes that's affiliated being a fan of Michigan, their eyes are open, and they're realizing, oh boy, we can't puff our chest out. We have nothing to show for it. I mean, Michigan State, Ohio State, now Notre Dame is in the college football playoff. All their rivals, all the teams that they have fought against and battled against have reached success faster than what's taking place at Michigan. And I looked at it, and people have said, well, what did Nick Saban do? Nick Saban's first year wasn't the best at Alabama. His second year won a bunch of games, and then his third year was an undefeated season, won the national title in year 3 at Alabama. And so I think people, it's probably a little unrealistic to expect that. I would have thought that they would have at least gotten to Indy by now, and to not be able to get to Indy where the opponent that you would have faced was going to be Northwestern, I think is a major indictment right now over there at Michigan, and they got to take a critical look at what's going on. And I think they will. I think that in the next month or so, you're going to have a lot of negative talk about Michigan. You're going to have a lot of negative talk about Jim Harbaugh. It's going to impact them. But I still say this. Jim Harbaugh is a resilient dude. I think that he is a good coach, a coach that can get you, okay? And remember, where Michigan came from to where they are now is better. But what is causing so much anger is the expectation was that he was going to be a national title competitive coach and bringing that Michigan program to the likes of Alabama, where they can get back there repeatedly and be in the mix every year. And I think right now people are realizing, oh boy, we paid $7.5 million for a coach that maybe could get us there once. And that's like basically paying $1 million for a $250,000 house. And when you overpay for something, you don't enjoy it as much. And especially when Michigan State and Notre Dame are paying their coaches less. Mark D'Antonio's only making like $4.4 million, and he's had similar success and arguably greater success than Jim Harbaugh. So when you're paying a coach that much, unfortunately, I know people say don't talk about money, don't talk about things like that, but it plays a part. You're paying for results. They're not paying for an average coach. They're not paying for an 8, 9, 10 win coach. They're paying for the guy when you're 10-1 and you show up to the big game to actually get you over the hump. And right now, that guy hasn't shown up, and especially when it's the game plan. So that's a really frustrating look. But I like the fact, and like you said it, Michigan has been humbled, and it's a good thing to see. And going forward, I'm curious to see how Michigan's going to respond. Now, if we turn our attention over to East Lansing, I didn't even watch the Rutgers game, and it was totally embarrassing to be down to them. I was like, what? They had to come back? And my wife texted me. She's like, yeah, they're losing. And so on our Twitter page, at Detroit Podcast, I said, look, I'm going to tweet out that the game started and when the game ended, and that was that. But to see the fact that the fans basically didn't come, it was the lowest attended game since the end of the John L. Smith era. It was a dull game. And again, Mark D'Antonio still, there's question marks regarding whether he's going to make some offensive changes, and that's pretty scary.
I know I was monitoring that game, and it was sickening to see us down 10-7 for so long. And I mean, you won basically on a trick play, and I feel like how many times have we won on trick plays this year? And if you want to call anything, it's the year of the trick plays and getting by. And I mean, maybe that's the difference between being 6-6 and 3-9. So it's a tough season. I'm not going to make excuses because we had a lot of injuries, but every team has injuries, and you have to get by. It's got to be the next man up mantra. And our offense was just stagnant for nearly 3 entire games. And
now Jason,
that needs to change.
Yes. Now, Jason, I think what we're seeing is the Lions, Michigan, and Michigan State, they really prided themselves on defense in a world in 2018 when defense basically has been minimized. And I'm disappointed. I'm sad in the fact that the football teams in this state are reactionary. They're not visionary. They are trying to win in an old school manner. Now, in a manner in which I like the fact that, defense, hard hitting. I like the ability to stop people, but you got to realize and you have to accept it. And, if I was going to be a coach, I think it's going to be here to stay because it's so entertaining. I would want to coach the offensive side of the ball because there's more penalties. The rules are set up for the receivers and the quarterback to take advantage of defenses. It's got to be super tough to be a defensive coach or a defensive player because a lot of the rules are slanted that way. But Michigan State, the Lions are really trying to sell that defense can win championships in an age and an era when, speed kills and the best college teams are dropping 40 like it's nothing.
Yeah, and, I looking at what changes could happen for Michigan or Michigan State, I know the name's been floated out there. Cliff Kingsbury from Texas Tech, he just got fired from there. And I think if either of those teams, if Michigan State or Michigan were progressive enough to go out and make him an offer to come in and, you don't have to go full run and gun. We saw that with John L. Smith. But I think you bring a guy like that in to revamp your offense, I think that could do wonders. And I mean, for Michigan State, I think it would definitely help. And I think if Jim Harbaugh, if he's humble enough to actually take a step back from running that offense and give a guy who actually has a vision on offense, who's a little bit more progressive, you look at it's exactly what Nick Saban did. He had Lane Kiffin come in there. He revamped their offense. They were sticking by the run, and now you have Tua Tagovailoa going out there just, tossing bombs. So, I don't know. All of our teams just need to get more progressive. They need to figure out the offensive side of the ball. And I hate going one side or the other, but we need to score points. Score more points,
yes.
You win games.
I think that's a good spot for us to wrap up. Jason, kind enough to give us a few minutes. Always enjoy his presence on the Motor City Sports Rant. Next week, for sure, he'll be in studio. We'll have a more comprehensive breakdown of the Lions. I think not talking about them as much made it for a much more fun show. Marvin Jones, the news of the day, placed on IR. Team Tank is in full gear. They need to lose out, and unfortunately, Matt Stafford now, he's also in the crosshairs. We'll talk more about that. Michigan State, their bold destinies will be further discussed and evaluated. Jason, thank you so much for the time. I look forward to our chats in the future.
Definitely. See ya.
See you, Jason.
Later, man.
I want to thank everybody for downloading this show. Thank you to the show sponsors, Podomatic and the Motor City Pawnbrokers. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to air our great podcast each and every day. I want to thank everybody for downloading the podcast. You can find it anywhere podcasts are found. Thank you for the great engagement on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. You can follow Jason on Twitter at Jarvi the King. Thanks, everybody. I look forward to catching up with you on the next edition of the Motor City Sports Rant.
Okay, nice, idiot. You. Bye-bye.
Good day, sir. I said good day.
All right. Take care now. Bye-bye then.
Loser.